I tell you what blows my mind. Glitches in the Matrix. You know those moments that just don't make sense, when something happens that feels slightly off, like reality shifted without asking your permission? Well, with that in mind, I've got 3 more Glitch in the Matrix stories for you, and one of them feels like it crossed timelines. The first story takes us back to 1941, right in the middle of World War II. A young Royal Air Force pilot was flying a routine patrol over the English Channel when he was suddenly redirected. There had been reports of a vessel spotted near the Goodwin Sands, and with the war in full swing, anything unusual in those waters had to be investigated. But when he arrived, what he saw didn't match anything that he'd been trained to recognise. Cutting through the fading light was a long, narrow ship. Not metal, not modern, wood. At first he thought it might be some kind of small craft, maybe damaged, maybe drifting. So he made a low pass over it, and that's when things got strange, because the ship didn't react. No attempt to signal, no attempt to change course. It just kept moving, steadily, silent, like it hadn't even noticed him. So he decided to circle back again, flying lower this time. And what he claimed to see next didn't make any sense at all. Figures rowing, men dressed in what he later described as Viking style clothing. Not uniforms, not anything from that time. Something much, much older. So he called for backup. Another aircraft arrived, along with a Royal Navy vessel heading towards the same location, and both crews reported seeing it too. The same longship moving through the mist, as if it belonged there. But by the time they reached the area properly, it was gone. No wreckage, no debris, no explanation, just open water, like nothing had ever been there at all. So what did they really see? A misidentified vessel in poor visibility? A trick of the light in the middle of a war zone? Or a moment where 2 different points in time briefly crossed over? But what if it's not just brief moments or sightings? What if it's something that affects hundreds of people all at once? The next story doesn't come from a battlefield. It comes from a city where something far stranger took hold. In the summer of 1518 in Strasbourg, a woman stepped out into the street and began to dance. At first it didn't seem unusual, but she didn't stop. Hours passed, then days, and still she kept going, completely unable to control it. Eventually her body gave out and she collapsed from exhaustion. But after resting, she got back up and started dancing again. And then something even stranger happened. Others joined her. One by one, more people were affected. Not by choice, not for entertainment. They just couldn't stop. Within a week, dozens of people were caught up in the uncontrollable movement. And it only got worse. The streets began to fill with people dancing day and night, pushing their bodies past the point of injury. Some reportedly collapsed, some didn't survive. And instead of stopping it, the authorities made a decision that only made it worse. They encouraged it, believing the only cure was to let it run its course. They brought in musicians, even professional dancers, to keep them moving. But all that did was pull more people into it, until hundreds were affected. An entire city caught up in something no one could explain. And then, just as suddenly as it began, it stopped. No clear cause, no real explanation. Some say it was mass hysteria. Others blamed contaminated food or disease. But even now, no one can say for certain why it happened. So, what was it really? A psychological outbreak? A reaction to extreme stress maybe? Or something else? Something that spread through reality itself? Here's a thought. If you've ever seen a glitch in a game, you'll know it doesn't always look like something breaking. Sometimes it looks like something repeating over and over again, like it's stuck in a loop. But not all glitches feel so distant. Some feel a little too close to home. The next story doesn't come from history. It comes from someone just going about their day. A long-haul truck driver named Jake had pulled into a truck stop in Louisiana. Nothing unusual, just another stop on a long journey. He headed inside to grab some food, a sandwich he'd had plenty of times before. Turkey, extra cheese, garlic mayo, his favourite. But as he stepped up to the counter, the man behind it looked at him and said, "Oh hey man, you're back again for another one." Jake paused, because he'd only just arrived. He told him that, but the man just shook his head and said, "No, you were here earlier, at the start of my shift." Then a woman came out from the back. She looked straight at him and smiled. "Oh, you're here again. You must have really enjoyed that sandwich I made for you earlier." At this point, Jake knew something wasn't right, because earlier that day, he hadn't even been there. He'd been in Georgia, hours away. He told them that, but they were certain. Not only had they seen him, they remembered what he ordered. The exact sandwich. Turkey, extra cheese, garlic mayo, his favourite. They even said he'd been talking about his wife Jackie, about how he only had 3 days left on the road before heading home. And every detail was correct. The location he'd come from, his wife's name, his exact sandwich order. So what really happened here? Mistaken identity maybe? But that still doesn't explain how someone could know that much about Jake's life. So what was it? A version of him arriving before he did? Sadly, nobody knows. So what's really going on here? You've got a wartime pilot seeing something that looks like it came from the past, like 2 points of time briefly overlapped. Then you've got an entire city caught in something that feels almost programmed, repeating the same movements over and over again, like it's stuck in a loop. Finally, you've got a man being recognised in a place he's never been, with details no one should know, as if another version of him got there first. 3 completely different stories, but all pointing towards the same question. What if reality isn't as fixed as we think it is? What if sometimes it slips? I'm not here to tell you what to think, but I am here to ask the questions. So what do you think? Glitches in the Matrix, or something else entirely? You decide. And as always, if you enjoy my videos, please subscribe to my channel.